Trump's tariff war is backfiring and America is paying the price. For Trump, foreign countries are paying the tariffs, but in reality, it's the US paying the largest share. Trump thinks arm-twisting friendly nations will pay off. Instead, he's committing a series of strategic blunders that will cost America in the long run. So what is happening? Who is really paying for Trump's tariffs, and what does this mean for the US? This is Shubhangi Sharma and you're watching Fine Point. Let's dive in. Donald Trump's second stint in the White House was meant to mark a return to economic nationalism, a revival of his signature America First agenda. At the heart of this strategy is a sweeping tariff regime, an aggressive attempt to punish trade partners, bring manufacturing home, and tilt the global balance of power. But as the dust settles, the tariff war is turning into a landmine of errors, hurting the US economy, straining alliances, and failing to deliver the promised results. The US is now heading towards high inflation and slow growth. Now, Trump likes to say that tariffs are paid by foreign countries. The reality, though, is starkly different. Goldman Sachs estimates that the USA will pay 75% of the tariffs. So it is mostly American consumers and businesses that are footing the bill. US manufacturers, already stretched by high borrowing costs, are absorbing billions in added costs for imported components. Those costs are now trickling down to US consumers. As per Goldman Sachs, the American households will face an extra $5,200 annually in price increases. Inflation, which had cooled briefly, is rising again, with the consumer price index ticking up in response to the tariff shock. For now, it is American businesses that are paying for most of the tariffs, but they are very clear. They cannot eat these tariffs for too long as they risk going under. Soon, most of these tariffs will be paid for by the consumers. As per Goldman Sachs again, starting in the fall, as many of the higher tariffs threatened by Trump take effect, the consumer share of the tariff cost is expected to rise to 67%, while the share for US businesses will fall to 8%. And the remaining 25% will be absorbed by foreign exporters. So most of the tariffs will be paid for by US consumers. Now, the average US tariff rate has now climbed to 17%, a level which was last seen during the Great Depression. For a modern economy deeply tied to global supply chains, this is a red flag. From automobiles to pharmaceuticals, industries rely on foreign inputs. Tariffs on these goods don't bring jobs back. They raise costs, cut margins, and in some cases force production to move elsewhere. In fact, the latest data shows that manufacturing isn't coming back to Ohio or Michigan simply because labor costs are way too high. Instead, supply chains are shifting to Vietnam, Thailand, and even India, creating new hubs outside the US, but far from Trump's vision of reshoring. Moreover, Trump plans to collect hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs to enrich his treasury so that he can in turn plan tax cuts and take some political mileage out of it. But as consumers start to bear the brunt, he is losing support politically. Trump's approval ratings have dipped significantly, with the YouGov poll pegging the president's approval rating at 41% and his disapproval rating at 55%. Trump is using tariffs as a foreign policy weapon recklessly. He has turned tariffs into a blunt geopolitical instrument, linking trade duties to issues far beyond commerce. But the pushback is evident. Spain was threatened after defense talks soured, and in response, Madrid scrapped its planned F-35 fighter jet purchase. Switzerland, after failing to secure a deal in Washington, retaliated to the 39% tariffs by freezing deliveries of aircraft and business jets to the US. The EU and Japan have been resisting pressure from Trump even as they folded, while Brazil is preparing countermeasures after facing steep duties on steel and agricultural exports. The biggest irony here is that this tariff offensive has exposed, not reduced, America's dependence on China. Despite Trump's rhetoric, US imports from China remain significant, and many made in Vietnam and made in Thailand products still contain Chinese components. Instead of decoupling, the policy is driving diversification in Asia, not toward the US, but away from it. In fact, Trump's dependence on China is laid bare even more as he has extended a deadline for additional tariffs on Beijing by another 90 days. He is hoping for a favorable deal with Xi Jinping in October. Trump is also yet to play the Russian oil card with China as he has done with India, even though China is the largest buyer of Russian oil ahead of India. Trump is afraid of Chinese retaliation, especially in the domain of rare earths. So Trump's onslaught on India over Russian oil lacks a firm foundation from the very beginning. In this sense, India is right to call Trump's bluff. In fact, India is a prime example of Trump's miscalculation. The president targeted New Delhi with 50% tariffs, citing its continued purchase of discounted Russian oil. This was a move intended as economic coercion, but India has not blinked. Instead, it is doubling down on the strategy of multi-alignment, strengthening energy ties with Russia, pursuing a reset with China, exploring deeper trade with Europe, including a crucial trade deal in the works, and signaling that no amount of tariff pressure will dictate its foreign policy. India's exporters, particularly in textiles, jewelry, pharmaceuticals, and electronics, are already pivoting towards alternative markets, all while prices in the US go up. American experts now say that far from isolating India, Trump's approach risks pushing New Delhi closer to BRICS partners, including Russia and China. They warn that the spat could undermine the $190 billion in total bilateral trade and diminish America's leverage in the Indo-Pacific, a region where Washington has long sought to counter Beijing. Alienating India for trade leverage is a short-sighted policy with, interestingly, no takers outside of Trump's circle. Indeed, India is calling Trump's bluff, betting that its growing role in global supply chains and its political capital in Asia gives it more options than Washington anticipated. Trump once touted tariffs as a political win, a populist symbol of economic sovereignty, but that narrative is now crumbling. Inflation is eating into household budgets, manufacturers are warning of layoffs, and consumer frustration is mounting. And Trump is quite afraid of this truth getting out. In April, Amazon announced plans to display a tariff cost indicator on product pages, a move that could have laid bare the hidden tax Americans are paying. The White House reportedly intervened. In fact, Trump made an angry phone call to Jeff Bezos, and the feature was then scrapped, but not before headlines amplified the story. It is quite clear that Trump would be under tremendous pressure if consumers start to realize that they're the ones paying for these tariffs. The bottom line is that the tariff war was supposed to project strength. Instead, it is fueling perceptions of economic mismanagement and strategic blunders. Nations are moving away from the US market. Allies like Canada, Spain, and Switzerland are rebelling. Emerging economies like India are asserting their autonomy, and China has been emboldened by Trump's weak stance. Washington's coercive trade diplomacy is proving costly, not just in dollars, but in credibility.